the worst catastrophe in the history of wrestling. Yeah. That's not this movie, but it could be. In fact, it's all right. It's not as bad as it may be. I mean, I've been looking at some wrestling movies over the years, as you know, and I've alighted on one called Grunt! Exclamation mark or point. The wrestling movie, 1985. Now, he said, clearing his throat to make sure everybody can hear him properly. At the time, in 85, you had all of the kind of kayfabe stuff. Is the Dr. D David Schultz and the smacking, someone on the ear, a talk show host or reporter, wasn't it? Is that 85? Is that 86? Anyway, you do have the kayfabe situation going on. So it is surprising to see in this movie people like, I think Dick Slater's in there, John Tolos, Golden Greek is certainly in there, Adrian Street's all over it at one point, and Steve Strong's in there. I think it must be the Steve Strong who was Strangler de Santos. What's he called also? In Stampede in the late 80s. Might be a different person. I'm going to get a bit of food out my tooth there, but nobody wants to see that, do they? I'm getting too relaxed when I'm doing this. That's what it is, too relaxed. It may be him, but the basic idea is a pull back of the curtain. And with a bit of comedy in there as well. It's done by Alan Holtzman, directed by Alan Holtzman, with a kind of, this is a TV movie, folks, that sort of feeling. It's written by Alan Holtzman, Tony Randell, and Lisa Tomei. And it's got a kind of familiar warmth to it. Nobody seems to be taking the mickey out of wrestling. They just seem to be pointing up some of the things that happen. So, just to give you a bit of an idea of what happens here, he said, hastily accessing his notes. We've got black and white footage for a while of a wrestling match. It's called the worst catastrophe in the history of professional wrestling because Skull Crusher Johnson, who is the champ, has his head taken clean off his shoulders, folks. He's decapitated by Mad Dog Joe DeCurso. Now, it's obviously a real, it's quite a significant event. It's never happened before, really. I can understand why they say it's the most extraordinary thing or the most ridiculous thing or the worst catastrophe. Yeah. And afterwards, his manager says he's come back from worse than that. He was still the champ. He's still got the belt. Mad Dog is exonerated because it happened in the ring. But unfortunately, then he slammed the judge and went to jail. Came out in 79 and jumped from a bridge and committed suicide. Or did he? That's the whole idea, because 6 years later, there's a commissioner who's really not very good. He can answer one question, which is, well, Skull Crusher hasn't defended his belt since he became decapitated. So it's quite funny wheeling this. So it's going to be up for grabs, and it's going to be a battle royale. Now, we don't have any idea of any of the territories. This is the GWA. Do they call it? It's in Georgia. And you see that with, some of the guys who are presenting it. As one said, I will bet my wage if I was paid to do this. That's great. So the whole idea is that there is a documentary filmmaker who then enlists the help of a rather ratty-looking, down-at-heel doctor who knows Joe DeCurso, Mad Dog, or knew him. He wants to prove that a guy who is a good guy who's come into the territory called The Mask. he wears a mask, the clue is in the title, is actually Joe DiCurso. Now, he has a tattoo in one part of his body, but no tattoos on his arms, which Joe DiCurso has. And he goes to a tattoo expert that says, well, you can have them taken off. It's quite painful. It leaves scarring. There's no scarring on his hands. All of that. So it's a ridiculous situation to start with. As he says, I've sunk my mother's money into this. And they go and see things. People like his former manager. We see the Mask fighting people like the Grunt brothers. I think Dick Slater's in there as one of them. By the way, his manager's called Angel Face. She's French. For some reason, I can't think of any other valet who was French. Oh, Frenchie Martin. He was French-Canadian, wasn't he? But Frenchie Martin, remember him? In the WWF, in the good old days of the WWF. Yes. And so he faces the Grunt brothers. He beats them both. He fights El Toro. You see this. I mean, I think it looks like Manny Fernandez. He is. He's got a mask which covers his eyes, and then he's got two big horns on it. It looks ridiculous. He is the GWA champion, and we see quite a lot of this match actually. It's kind of the stuff I could comment on. So they're doing all the moves and all that. There's a female commentator on this who says, never in my 6 months of watching wrestling. See, it's got some nice comments to it, and nice moments. We've got a bit, you've of course got a right-wing TV host who gets the mask on and gets beaten up. I mean, that was happening regularly, wasn't it? Because you had Hulk Hogan, didn't you? And Mr. T on a talk show. Was it Geraldo? And, you know, he put him in a headlock and then he went limp and wasn't him, was it? But that kind of thing. And then he sued and all of that. So you have got that. They hit a lot of tropes, including Adrian Street's sort of talk show bit, where he's got both Tolos and, because of course he's left his manager. By the time he's asked to fight after he wins the title from El Toro, he's asked to fight the Human Pyramid, or the Pyramid, which is 4 smaller wrestlers. Now, some people call them midget wrestlers, and that's not a good thing to do, but 4 smaller wrestlers on each other's shoulders. It's a bit ridiculous, and he finds a bit of trouble with them, and he leaves the ring and doesn't want to wrestle them, and leaves his manager as well, and takes up with the Golden Greek, John Tolos, who doesn't seem as though, particularly when Adrian Street is kind of talking him up and saying, you know, you're very good looking and all that. You've got this from John Tolos. That sort of thing. It's a rictus of kind of uncertainty. It's not ideal. Of course, they're both on the show, and then there's another big, well-muscled wrestler who comes on called Captain Carnage, and he's slapped by the Mask, and then the set is destroyed as Adrian Street sits there. We've got some female wrestling with Street's A Mighty Big Girl for Her Age track. It's not ideal, and quite a lot of Adrian Street's music is used here, and it's not ideal. Remember, it's not even remember, it's just think what I could do to you. About that. Yeah, what about that? Yeah. And then we've got the Battle Royale. One half of American Starship is on there. Eagle. Looks like Dan Spivey to me. The other one was Scott Hall, of course. Because they were in the mid-Atlantic area when I'm watching that in 84, 85. And then suddenly, when they're halfway through the Battle Royale, or towards the end of it, I don't know how he gets in, because he can't have gone up the stairs to get into this venue. He must have found a back door some way, because he's on a motorbike. In comes Mad Dog, so it can't be. The Mask can't be Mad Dog. They fight. He takes the mask off. We don't recognise anybody under it, and actually, what's the point? Well, wrestling's popular, god damn it! And they do that sort of. They ask somebody, what's the connection between rock and wrestling? Of course, it was coming up, that, wasn't it, in the WWF? With Cyndi Lauper and all of that, Ice Cooper. And she says there's no connection. So, also they speak to a lot of fans. Who do you fancy? El Toro's my man, you know. The Mask. The Mask. And it's all right, this. There are no good performances in it. No good performances. You can't point to anybody and say, oh, he's all right, she's okay. There's nothing like that. But nobody's really egregious either. And do you know what? They actually have a bit of a laugh. Not at wrestling's expense, because quite a lot of it is the stuff we know. It's tongue-in-cheek. It doesn't break kayfabe. You know what's happening. And they have some fun with that. It's good to spend time with. You have to be a wrestling fan. But you know what? Have a look at this. It's on YouTube. And I think you might quite enjoy it. But you probably won't. Ta-ta.